We're not stopping the clock itself until probably early next year, and then what we're going to be doing is taking this opportunity when the tower's being refurbished to actually refurbish the whole of the mechanism, and I mean everything from the hands all the way back to the clock mechanism. All the mechanism itself would all be lowered down the tower and worked on.
These are live pictures coming to us from London of the world's most famous clock and Britain's most memorable icon. Welcome to this special coverage as we count down the minutes to Big Ben's final chime, first final chime for the next 4 years. I'm Jeff Moody in Beijing.
And I'm Gavin Blackburn, also in Beijing, and in the next 20 minutes or so we've got all the facts and figures to keep even the most hardened clockaholic happy.
Clockaholic?
Yeah, it's a good one, right?
How long did it take you to invent that?
Not long.
Well, why does this matter, you might be saying? Why do we care whether Big Ben chimes or not? It's after all just a clock. So we'll be looking at why it matters to us Brits, what Big Ben means to us, and explaining why its silence for some of us is a little hard to bear.
Indeed we will, and we'll also be hearing about how China's very own Big Ben chimed to welcome the Queen. What do you think about that?
I think it sounds insane, but I look forward to hearing all about it.
And by the way, if you'd like to drop us a comment or ask us a question about this live streaming on CGTN, our email address is livestreaming@cgtn.com. Get tapping away.
So we're looking now at live pictures of Big Ben. This is being filmed for us from Abingdon Green, which is just it's where all of the politicians come out to be interviewed and grilled by hardened journalists like you and me.
Just like us.
So we have about 21 minutes until the final chimes for the next 4 years. It's going to stop chiming, at least on a regular basis. We have heard that it will still chime for some special occasions, for New Year's Eve. And the clock face itself, the most famous clock in the world, will be covered in scaffolding, sadly. At least one of the clock's faces, there's 4 of them, and at any given time one will be free so that people can still tell the time in London.
Assuming you're on the right side of the clock.
Assuming on the right side of the clock, yeah. But let's start off by having a look at why this is happening.
Well, it's nothing particularly scary, I have to say, Jeff. It all boils down to essential maintenance, and it's not the first time that this has happened either. I can think of 4 occasions where Big Ben has fallen silent. For example, 1956, the bell stopped chiming for 4 months to replace the glass in each of the 4 clock faces. And then again in 1983, 1985, and more recently in 2007, the chimes were locked and not heard again due to essential maintenance.
Did you know that in 1949, the clock was... this clock is one of the most accurate clocks in the world. It's known as being incredibly accurate. But in 1949, the clock was 4.5 minutes slow because a flock of starlings perched on the minute hand.
Well, there you go.
And they slowed it down.
How many starlings? That's what I want to know.
A flock's worth.
A flock's worth of
However
starlings.
much a flock's worth is.
Well, this particular programme of maintenance is largely to make the building more energy efficient. That's very important. Plus, the engineers are also installing a lift, a toilet and a kitchen. The clock itself is also due to be dismantled piece by piece, cleaned and repaired, and hopefully put back together again. However, during the work, an electric motor is set to drive the clock hand, so Londoners, as Jeff just mentioned, will still be able to tell the time. And parliamentary authorities have said that stopping Big Ben is to protect the workers working inside the Elizabeth Tower.
It's because it's so loud, isn't it?
Because it's so loud.
When they're working inside, suddenly every quarter of an hour it strikes up.
That's
They're
going to
gonna
start clanging, you're going to have some problems.
And of course, people in Britain are saying this is health and safety gone mad. You
Yeah.
know, surely we should just give them some headphones and problem solved. But no, people have deemed that people's safety should come first, and they don't want anyone's hearing to be affected. So Big Ben is going silent.
But as you said, not everyone is particularly happy with the idea of Big Ben falling silent, and especially not for 4 years. In fact, disappointment with the decision to stop the bells has gone right to the top of the government.
Of course we want to ensure people's safety at work, but it can't be right for Big Ben to be silent for 4 years. And I hope that the Speaker, as Chairman of the House of Commons Commission, will look into this urgently so that we can ensure that we can continue to hear Big Ben through those 4 years.
Well, this has caused consternation. I mean, this might sound a bit weird. For instance, the Today programme on the BBC always starts with live bongs from Big Ben.
Of course
there's
it does,
a microphone that is inside the clock tower that broadcasts live to BBC Broadcasting House, and they always start with the chimes of Big Ben. So they've had this big debate, what do they do when it goes silent? They thought, well, should we just go to another clock? And they decided, no, it should be Big Ben. So they've recorded it now. They've recorded the chimes, and for the next 4 years it'll be a recording.
Panic over.
Panic over. There's a recording.
Well, Big Ben, this most famous of bells, has sounded the hour for 157 years across London. It's housed in Elizabeth Tower, 96 metres high, which is said to be the most photographed building in the UK, and indeed the world, certainly one of the most iconic buildings that we have in the United Kingdom. Construction on the tower was completed in 1859, and the clock itself was completed in 1854 and cost in its day a staggering £2,500. Now, delays to the tower meant that the clock couldn't be installed until April of 1859. And once that had happened, now there's a whole series of delays with the construction of Big Ben. Once the clock was installed, April 1859, the cast iron hands, the clock hands, which would be
Were too heavy, weren't they?
were too heavy so they wouldn't move. So had to be replaced.
They checked that out in advance.
You would have thought so. Had to be replaced with lighter copper ones, and the clock then began keeping time finally on May the 31st, 1859.
And I think we have to look at the context of when this was and what was going on in the world. This was the height of Victoriana. Queen Victoria had been on the throne for 23 years at that point. The British Empire was on the rise. Britain really did rule the waves. We were a country, the sun never set on the British Empire. And so this was a real symbol of British power at the time. And if you look at the bottom of your screen, you see some Latin, which is written underneath the clock tower. Now, I don't know how good your Latin is.
Well, it's pretty much non-existent, but I'm sure you're going to tell me what it says.
It says, you can't really see because of the tree, but it says Domine Salvum Fac Reginam Nostrum Victoriam Primum, which basically means, "O Lord, keep safe our Queen Victoria the First." There's only been one Victoria.
Regina had to be the Queen. And of course, this was smack bang in the middle of the Industrial Revolution as well.
Absolutely. So, you know,
back in the 19th century.
It was. Let's just clear up for people that maybe don't know, what is Big Ben, what is the clock, and what is the tower?
Yes, go on then. Am I clearing that up?
You can clear that up
Okay.
for me.
So, the clock is the clock, and the clock is called, perhaps unsurprisingly, the Great Clock. And the clock sits at the top of what is now known as the Elizabeth Tower, named, perhaps again, unsurprisingly, after our current Queen, Elizabeth II.
But it was only called that fairly recently. It was her Jubilee
it was
in
during
2012.
her 50th anniversary Jubilee that it was renamed. Previous to that, it was just called the Great Tower. They weren't hot on names, the Victorians, it seems. The bell itself is what is called Big Ben, and this is the bell that's sitting right in the top of Elizabeth Tower. Now, the nickname Big Ben, there's a little bit of confusion about where this could come from.
Who was Ben, and was he big?
Well, we've got two contenders for the title of the real Big Ben. It's thought that it could either have been Sir Benjamin Hall, who was the guy that oversaw the installation of the bell, or Ben Caunt, who at the time was a championship heavyweight boxer. However, the first theory is thought to be the most likely. So I can only imagine Sir Benjamin Hall was a big chap. Now, the story of the Big Ben bell is perhaps just as turbulent as the story of the tower itself, because the first bell was cast in 1856 near Stockton-on-Tees in northeast England, and was then transported by rail and sea to London. It was hung in New Palace Yard and tested daily until 1857, because if you remember, there were delays with the construction of the tower. And during the daily testing, it cracked. So the bell had to be recast by a London firm in 1858. So they've got this new bell, but it's too large to fit into the tower vertically. So it was turned on its side, winched up the tower, the 93-metre tower, in a process that took 30 hours, and it was finally in position October 1858. Now, it first rang, sounding the hour, on the 11th of July 1859, but that success was also short-lived because it cracked. And that bell was taken out of service for 4 years, although the hours were struck by the smaller quarter bells, which we're going to hear in about 12 minutes' time. The solution was found in 1863. Big Ben was simply rotated so the hammer struck a different point, and a lighter hammer was used. And a Big Ben, in case you're interested, it chimes an E note. I bet you didn't know that.
Does it?
It chimes an E note. Chimes an E note.
Well, did you, while we're looking at sort of insignificant facts about Big Ben, did you know that the tower leans slightly?
Oh, I didn't know
The
that.
Leaning Tower of Westminster, we should call it.
Right.
It leans to the northwest by approximately 230 millimetres.
Is that pre-bell or post-bell? What's
Well,
causing it to lean?
I've no idea what actually has caused it to lean, but it is definitely on a tilt.
Well, I bet you didn't know that China has its own version of Big Ben, of sorts. We've got to go down to the coastal city of Shanghai, to the famous customs house and the clock on top of that building, which was installed in 1928. And to the people of Shanghai, it is to them what Big Ben is to Londoners. Now, the Queen visited the city during a state visit to China back in 1986, and what the city authorities did to make her feel more at home was to change the notes of the customs house clock so that it chimed and sounded exactly like Big Ben, which was their way of welcoming her to the city, making her feel a little bit more at home. Well, to find out a little bit more about China's very own version of Big Ben, CGTN's Lin Nan went to Shanghai to meet the man who's been keeping his eye on the time for the last 27 years.
Climbing 117 steps, this Halloween's route day has started for the past 27 years. The 58-year-old is the fourth guardian to maintain the clock on top of the customs house to ensure it chimes accurately every 15 minutes.
In the past, many locals didn't need a watch to know the time when they come to the bound. They could estimate the time simply by listening to the length of the clock's chimes. The bell is iconic in many people's memories here.
The clock is the largest in Asia and the third largest in the world after London's Big Ben and the one in the Red Square in Moscow. Compared with his predecessors, which job is made easier by some technological innovations, but modern technology doesn't play a role in every part of his work.
The clock has to be rewound every 3 days. That means I can't leave Shanghai for long. The only time I traveled outside Shanghai in the last 27 years was to visit Xi'an in 2009. I had to ask my predecessor to fill in for me.
Over the years, Wei has watched the sweeping changes overtake Shanghai from the top of what was once the city's highest building.
The clock tower is an icon of Shanghai, and it is a privilege to work here. You need to be very responsible to balance work and life well, and treat the clock like your child.
Wei hopes that he would take his family out for trips after retirement, but before that, he would stick to his post to ensure the clock bell echoes across Shanghai, just like it has done since 1928. Lin Nan, CGTN, Shanghai.
CGTN's Lin Nan there reporting from Shanghai about China's very own version of Big Ben.
What's the Chinese for Big Ben, Gav?
Oh yes, there is. You thought you could have catch me out there.
No,
didn't you?
I knew you.
There is a Chinese name for
Your
Big
Chinese
Ben.
is so much better than mine.
And I have to say, it's adorable, right? I'm going to break this down. It's 3 characters. It's Da, Ben, Zhong, which word
Da,
for word?
bun,
Da,
jong,
bun, jong,
Big Ben clock.
big. Haha, that's what you might think. Well, of course, the bun has been chosen because of Ben. But bun in Chinese can also mean stupid. So a literal translation of this is big stupid clock.
Big stupid clock.
Big stupid clock, which I suppose...
Thank you, China.
Which I suppose for some people it might well be. And on the subject of slightly bonkers reactions to Big Ben falling silent for 4 years, I've just heard that MPs around the Palace of Westminster are holding tonight a candlelight vigil, which seems a little bit over the top for a simple clock.
Well, you know, I don't agree with you, actually. I mean,
Oh, you wouldn't.
We can. I've never agreed with you. I mean, we can have some fun about this, and we can say, you know, it's only a clock, and it's just stopping. It's just stopping chiming. Nothing's significant has happened. But we have to remember what this clock means for us British people.
Mm.
This is our symbol. This is our symbol of. This is our identity. This is our culture. It's told the time through 2 world wars. It's a symbol of Britishness. It's a symbol of resilience. And I think it's incredibly important. Symbols are very important. Look how in Nazi Germany, how significant the swastika was as a symbol, and how that symbol even now generates an emotion in people. It makes us feel fear. And the same with this. The chimes of Big Ben are extremely important. They have been ringing out through world wars and such. I mean, for instance, my father always talks about listening to the old Cat's Whisker wireless back in 1936 and hearing about the abdication of Edward VIII. And then the following year, hearing the wartime announcement, Neville Chamberlain announcing that the country was at war. And before these announcements, you always get Big Ben. It's our greatest symbol. And what I question, I understand that we need to maintain Big Ben, we need to maintain the tower. I understand these things are important. But this is the equivalent of the French putting a covering over the Eiffel Tower. It's our big symbol. It's the thing that says we're British, we won't stand any nonsense. And if you think what's happening in the world today, we have all of these tensions in the Korean Peninsula, we have all sorts of problems coming out of the United States. The British themselves, we're confused about our identity at the moment, with the Brexit debate still raging. Are we having a hard Brexit? Are we having a soft Brexit? There's the rise of the alt-right right across Europe. It's important, these terror attacks. I mean, it was only last year that there was a terror attack right underneath Big Ben on Westminster Bridge. You know, terrorism struck to the heart of Westminster, to the heart of who we are as a nation and what we believe in as a nation. So to cover up our most powerful symbol at a time like this, I think is absolutely foolhardy. It's like the Americans covering up the Statue of Liberty. We need these symbols, that they're important. So although I agree with what you're saying, it's just a clock, it's still going to be there, it's just not going to be chiming, it's no big deal. For me, I'm very sad about it. For me, it is quite a big deal.
Well, can I just bulldoze right through your impassioned speech and reassert that I think that it is just a clock and it's perhaps not really all that important, although I do take on board what you say. And in particular, Big Ben being used as a symbol to announce an important event. And there are 2 annual events in the calendar that happen every year in the UK, always preceded by the chimes of Big Ben. One's celebratory and one's commemorative. So we've got New Year. We always hear New Year chimed in on radio, on television, by Big Ben. And then again in November, it marks the start of the 1-minute silence for Remembrance Sunday to mark the end of the First World War. So it's present. It's present.
Yes, but you also have to remember that the BBC World Service, for example, they started using the chimes of Big Ben at the beginning of all of their broadcasts, the live chimes. This isn't a recording, live chimes, and they started that on New Year's Eve 1923. This was in the days before the internet, before lots of TV stations, before satellite. So if you were a British person somewhere else in the world, the only connection you had with home was the BBC World Service, and that connection began with the chimes of Big Ben. It's in our culture, when we hear the chimes of Big Ben, it tells us we're home and it tells us we're safe.
Once you've got that,
And for me, it's not just a clock that's no longer going to chime. For me, it's that regular comforting symbol that says, you know what, you may be away from home, there may be problems in the world, but you're safe. And for me, that symbol is stopping.
Well, I suppose a lot of other people feel the same as you, Jeff, because a 2008 survey, for example, found that Big Ben, perhaps unsurprisingly, was the most popular landmark in the whole of the United Kingdom, and it's also been named as the most iconic film location in London. So, I suppose I should tell you what Big Ben means to me. Do you want to know what I think of when I think of Big Ben? I'll tell you very quickly, because it looks like we're about 3 minutes to the final chimes. HP sauce. HP sauce, brown sauce, for anyone that doesn't know, like a brown spicy condiment, similar to ketchup but spicy and brown. HP sauce, Houses of Parliament sauce, which we put on our...
And being a northerner, HP sauce is more important to you than it is for me as a southerner.
So come on, what does Big Ben mean to you then? Something slightly less frivolous, I imagine.
I've only got 3 minutes to tell you.
Yeah, come on.
For me, it's all about the news. ITN News, which is the opposition to the BBC, their flagship news programme is called News at 10, and News at 10 always begins with the chimes of Big Ben, has done for years. And you know, I remember in the 70s, before you were born, watching news and seeing the chimes of Big Ben and the image of Big Ben at 10 o'clock and feeling a sense of importance. It was one of the reasons I got into news, the excitement that creates, the sound of Big Ben. And to this day, ITN uses the chimes of Big Ben. They call them the bongs.
Oh, between the headlines.
Between the headlines.
Right. Yes, yeah, that's right.
And
the clock faces the logo.
Yes, and my first job in news, my first job anywhere, was working at ITN and working on News at 10. And just sitting in the studio and hearing the chimes of Big Ben was a very, very emotional thing for me.
It's something very authoritative, I think, isn't it, the chimes of Big Ben? Well, as we said, we've got, I think maybe a minute and a half it could be until the final chimes. The final time that we're likely to hear Big Ben on a regular basis until 2021, while this widespread period of renovation gets underway. I wonder, dare we keep waffling, or should we be quiet and just look at the clock?
I mean, we have to remember that the clock, it starts before exactly on time. It starts before the hour, because you have to have the dum 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 dum. You have to have all that bit at the beginning, and it's the first hourly chime that denotes the fact that it's 12 o'clock. So we're expecting it really to begin chiming, I would say, in about 30 seconds time.
Yeah, any time now. Just coming up to noon London time. It's a minute of 7 in the evening here in Beijing, as we sit here waiting for the final time that Big Ben is likely to chime for the next 4 years, and as a massive renovation project gets underway.
And I know you're you're a young cynic, and I'm older and fresher, but for me, I think it's quite an emotional thing. So let's pause now here on CGTN and have a listen to London. as a Brit living abroad, that stirs up a lot of memories for me, and actually quite a few emotions. I know that you think I'm a bit weird.
Oh, book your ideas up now.
It is. I think it's a sound that we all know so well in Britain, and it means something to us. And I personally feel very sad that I'm not going to hear that live for quite some time.
Well, you can hear it recorded on the BBC, and as you said before, it is still going to chime for special occasions. I don't think New Year in London would be New Year in London without Big Ben ringing in the New Year, do you?
Kind of not the point, but I take your points. I take your points.
I'm going to stick with my HP source. Well, if you're unlucky enough to be just joining us now, or if you want to see this all over again, if you're that mad, the recording of this live stream will be available on our website, CGTN.com, on our app, and across all our social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Weibo.
And as Big Ben falls silent, so must we. Thank you for sharing the last half an hour with us. I'm sorry that I've been slightly emotional about it. But,
An emotional wreck.
I wouldn't say I'm a wreck, but it's quite a big deal in my opinion.
Take it for a good cup of strong British tea. How do you fancy that?
And maybe a pint.
And maybe a
And
pint.
those
Or
pints
maybe a
of bitter.
pint.
Let's go off in a foreign land and
Warm
remember
beer.
home. Warm beer.
Why
yeah.
not indeed?
And that's it for us. Thank you very much for sharing that with us, the last moments of Big Ben.
So from Beijing, I'm Gavin Blackburn.
And
Thanks
I'm
for
Jeff
watching.
Lugan. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.